In this video, I'll be looking at a range of Godox speedlight flashes, from small and weak to large and powerful, to see how they perform when converted to full spectrum for ultraviolet photography. So let's start with a quick overview of the different flash models I'll be looking at. Some of my flashes are branded Pixar Pro and have different names to the Godox equivalents. Pixar Pro is a brand name used for Godox flashes sold by the UK retailer Essential Photo. The flashes are exactly the same as the Godox ones, other than the branding. In the video, I'll be referring to the flashes by their Godox model name, not the Pixar Pro model name. The different flashes I'll be looking at are the MF12. This is a small flash designed to sit on the end of your lens for macro photography. It has no foot to connect to the camera's hot shoe. It weighs 148 grams and measures 64.3 by 81 by 76.5 millimeters. The weight I'm quoting for all these flashes I measured with the battery, and the dimensions are from the information provided in the manual for each flash. The IT30 Pro is a very small flash that can be used as a wireless controller for other Godox flashes. It weighs 124 grams and measures 46 by 65 by 47 millimeters. The TT350 is a small flash that takes AA batteries and weighs 259 grams. It is also available as a model that uses a lithium-ion battery called the V350. It measures 38 by 62 by 140 millimeters. The V480 is a step up from the TT350 and features a large touchscreen on the back. It weighs 379 grams and measures 49 by 71 by 166 millimeters. The V862, mine is branded as the Pixar Pro Li-Ion 582, is a larger and more powerful flash, weighing 539 grams and measuring 64 by 76 by 190 millimeters. The V1, or Pixar Pro GI01 as mine is branded, is a flash with a round head. It weighs 542 grams and measures 76 by 93 by 197 millimeters. But I'm not sure where the 93 millimeter measurement comes from, since the head of the flash is round. The AD100 Pro is designed for off-camera use and has no foot to attach to the camera's hot shoe. It has a round design, weighs 543 grams and measures 76 by 120 millimeters. The AD200 Pro is also only usable off-camera. It has swappable heads. With the standard flash head, it weighs 893 grams and measures 54 by 75 by 208 millimeters. The other head the AD200 Pro comes with is the bulb head, but it does not come with the AD-S2 reflector dish you see here. That has to be purchased separately. This combination weighs 1026 grams and measures 121 by 295 millimeters. First, we'll test the flashes to see if any output UV as they are. The test images are shot with a full spectrum converted Canon R5, 80mm 5.6 EL Nikkor lens, and Barda-U UV pass filter. As you can see from these, only the AD200 with the bare bulb outputs any UV. To get the flashes to output ultraviolet, you need to remove the Fresnel lens at the front, as this blocks the UV output of the flash tube. For the tests I'll be showing later on, I've generally left the front of the flash empty, but you should replace the Fresnel lens with some other glass or plastic that does not block UV. Leaving it open means your flash tube could get broken, and it's also dangerous in case the flash tube explodes. I will be ordering some sunbed grade acrylic pieces to replace the Fresnel lenses on these flashes, but in the past I've just used the plastic cut up from an old CD case. To convert the MF12, first of all you need to undo the two screws near the front on the bottom. Use a spudger to prise the two halves of the flash casing apart. Carefully pull up the front part of the flash where the Fresnel is, enough so that you can remove the Fresnel. Note that the front PCB with the flash tube attaches to the lower PCB via a set of pins, and these will likely come unsocketed when you're doing this, so be sure to carefully socket these back in when you're done. The thin metal part at the front will need removing with the Fresnel lens, as it sits inside a rim on the back of the Fresnel. I'll go through my attempt at converting the IT30 Pro, but most of this is unnecessary. To take apart the IT30, there are two screws on the bottom. You need to unscrew these. The seam between the bottom and top parts of the case is very tight. If you pull up on the flash foot, you can hopefully separate the two parts at the corner near the flash foot enough to get a spudger in there. It's then a case of spuddering until you can eventually get the two parts separate. Once inside, you're greeted by what I assume is a lithium-ion battery that seems to be very well stuck down and would rather bend than come out. Hence, I decided to give up on this rather than risk blowing up the battery. I managed to purchase a second IT30 Pro at a reasonable price to try a more destructive and irreversible second conversion attempt. This time I used a knife to score along the edges of the Fresnel, repeating this process many times until I had eventually cut it out. With the Fresnel removed, it looks like it is actually just held in place with double-sided tape. So the actual conversion process for this flash should probably just be to heat up the front with a hairdryer to loosen the glue, then use a knife to get in around the edge of the Fresnel, and hopefully you can just lever it out in a non-destructive and fully reversible process. To convert the TT350, you need to remove the Godox sticker near the flash head and undo the two screws that are hidden under it. Pry up and remove the round rubber covers at either side of the flash head where the hinges are. Undo the screws on both sides. Use a spudger to separate the two halves of the top part of the flash. The clips that hold the pieces together at the hinge end are visible and can be pushed in with a small tool if necessary. With the top part of the flash open, you can then just slip the Fresnel lens out. For the V480, you first need to undo the two screws near the flash head, then pry up and remove the rubber covers at either side of the flash head where the hinges are. Mine were very stuck down, possibly using a hairdryer to warm up the glue may help. If the double-sided tape stays stuck to the flash rather than coming off with the rubber covers, cut it along the seam of the case halves, otherwise you won't be able to pull the two halves apart. Use a spudger to pry apart the two parts of the housing. This flash has a Fresnel lens and an additional piece of plastic in front of that. You need to remove both of these. If you've removed these and want to restore the flash to its original state, note that the pieces go with the rim side facing towards the flash tube. For the V862, undo the two screws near the flash head, pry up and remove the rubber covers at either side where the flash head hinges are. On either side, you only need to remove the two screws that are on the same half of the case. Use a spudger to pry apart the case. Note that the bottom of the case is connected to the flash PCB, so be careful when removing it. This flash has a Fresnel lens and an additional piece of plastic in front of that to remove. For the V1, you need to undo the 4 screws around the edge of the front of the flash head. That should be all, though for me I couldn't get the front out, so I then removed the rubber at the hinges and 2 of the screws there. Then when I was trying to get the halves to separate without success, the front parts just fell out. But I didn't actually get the case apart at all, so I'm not sure why the front pieces wouldn't come out when I was trying earlier. If you're trying to put one of these back to its original state later, the Fresnel goes with the ridgy side facing outwards and the smooth side towards the flash tube. Then in front of that is another piece of plastic that goes with the textured side towards the flash tube. So the textured side of both pieces are facing each other. For the AD100, you need to undo the 4 screws around the edge of the front of the flash head, then use some tweezers or something similar to try and lift off the metal outer ring. I did this with tweezers and putting the tip into the screw holes to lever up the ring. Then do the same with the front plastic ring and finally the Fresnel lens. Bashing the flash against your hand can also help dislodge the pieces. The AD100 and V1 front parts are the same, except the AD100 Fresnel is tinted pink. For the AD200 with the standard head, you want to work on the head detached from the flash. Undo the 2 screws on one side, then the 2 halves of the case should pull apart. This has the UV blocking Fresnel lens at the front, then a thicker clear glass piece behind it. The thicker glass piece only blocks a relatively small amount of UV, so you can just leave it in place if you want. Now let's look at the UV output after converting the flashes. For all these tests, the flash was placed so the front of the flash was 36 centimeters away from the target. As the V480 has 2 bits of plastic in front of the flash tube, I checked to see if they both block UV. You can see that both the Fresnel and the front piece of plastic do block UV, so both need removing to get UV output. The V862 has the Fresnel and another lens in front of the flash tube as well. Both the Fresnel and the front lens block UV, so they both need removing if you want to be able to use this flash for UV. The V1 has a Fresnel and diffuser in front of the flash tube. Both the Fresnel and the front diffuser block UV. The AD100 is like the V1 and both the Fresnel and diffusion layers block UV. The AD200 standard head just needs the Fresnel removing for UV output. The glass does not block much UV. The AD200 with bulb head we've already seen since it needs no conversion, but here it is again for reference. Based on the images from the previous test, I calculated what flash power would be needed for each flash to get a similar exposure. The images I'm showing here also have exposure compensation applied in post to try and match the exposures. It is slightly tricky because the light distribution is not exactly the same for each flash, and so some may be darker towards the top or bottom of the frame, but I've tried to match the exposures as best I can. My generalisations on how the flashes compare to one another in terms of power are based on the results from both this test and the previous test. The TT350 is about 1 1/3 stop brighter than the MF12 and weighs 1.75 times as much. The V480 is about 1/3 to half a stop brighter than the TT350 and weighs about 1.5 times as much. The V862 is about 2/3 to 1 stop brighter than the V480 and weighs about 1.4 times as much. The V1 is about 2/3 stop brighter than the V862 and weighs about the same. The AD100 Pro is about the same brightness as the V1 and weighs about the same. The AD200 Pro with the bulb head and AD-S2 reflector dish is about half a stop brighter than the AD100 or V1 and weighs about 1.9 times as much. The AD200 with the standard head is about 1 to 1 1/3 stop brighter than the bulb head and weighs about 10% less. The IT30 Pro I did not test with the other flashes, but I'd say it's about 1/3 of a stop better than the MF12 and it weighs about 20% less. So it seems that the increase in light output surpasses the increase in weight as you move up the models. The TT350 is over twice as bright as the MF12 but does not weigh twice as much, and the AD200 with the standard head is about 3 times as bright as the TT350 but does not weigh as much as the 8 TT350s you'd need for equivalent brightness. Some of the flashes have pull-out wide-angle diffusers as part of their design. I tested these in UV to see if they blocked UV. With the IT30 Pro, the wide-angle diffuser appears to block UV. The TT350 is about 1 2/3 of a stop darker with the wide-angle diffuser on. The V480 loses about 1.8 stops with the wide-angle diffuser. And the V862 loses about 1 stop with the wide-angle diffuser. And then to compare with how much light we lose with the wide-angle diffusers in visible light. In visible light, the TT350 loses around 1 1/3 of a stop with the wide-angle diffuser on. The V480 loses around 1 1/3 of a stop with the wide-angle diffuser. And the V862 is about 2/3 of a stop darker. So you lose about 1/3 to half a stop more in UV than you do in visible light when using the wide-angle diffuser. Now let's look at the light distribution for each flash in visible light. Ideally I would have also done this test before modifying the flashes, but I didn't think of it at the time. So instead I placed the Fresnel or front lens in front of the converted flash to see how it changed the light distribution. These were all taken with the front of the flash 36 cm away from the background, which was a large grey piece of card. When we compare the MF12 with the Fresnel and without the Fresnel, we see that removing the Fresnel has quite a large effect on the light spread. Without the Fresnel, the spread is much larger and, in my opinion, less pleasing. Having said that, unless you're photographing a plain background, you are unlikely to actually see the light spread in normal use. With the MF12, I have an unmodified unit that I could also test with. We can see from this that positioning the Fresnel in front of a converted flash gives a tighter light spread than unmodified. This is similar to the way the zoom works in flashes, moving the flash tube further back from the Fresnel the longer the zoom is set. The modified IT30 Pro in normal mode has a slightly darker stripe across the centre and horizontal lines are visible, though not very strongly. With the Fresnel added back in, the centre is slightly brighter while the corners are much darker, I would say overall we are losing light, but there are no weird patterns like we see with the bare tube. Unmodified, the spread of light is slightly wider than placing the Fresnel back in front of the modified version. With the converted TT350, we don't see any weird pattern and there is a pretty even spread of light. When we add the Fresnel back, the light is concentrated more, as you'd expect. I also tried putting the Fresnel on backwards. Possibly this is doing the opposite and expanding the light, but to me it looks like it's just reducing the light. With nothing in front of the flash tube, the V480 light spread looks fine. With just the Fresnel manually positioned in front, the light is much more concentrated and the spread looks a bit odd. With just the front piece manually positioned in front, the light spread seems similar to the bare flash tube, but we see some lines in the output. With both the Fresnel and front piece manually positioned in front, the light spread is concentrated but softer than the Fresnel by itself. With no glass on the V862, we see a rectangular portion across the centre of the image from left to right is brighter, while the top and bottom of the frame are darker. If we add the Fresnel in front, we get more concentrated light output in more of an oval pattern. If we put only the front piece in front, we get a similar result to bare. With both the Fresnel and front piece in front, we get a more concentrated spot. The V1 with the front pieces removed gives a light pattern similar to the V862. I wouldn't be surprised if they're basically the same flash, but the V1 with a circular Fresnel and diffusion layer. If we add the Fresnel in front, we get more of an oval pattern and the light is more concentrated. If we have the front diffusion only and no Fresnel, we get a very soft light pattern. With both the Fresnel and diffusion layers in front, we get a soft round light pattern with a bright centre. The AD100 Pro with the front pieces removed gives quite a soft pattern that is oval in shape. If we add the Fresnel in front, the light becomes more concentrated. With the diffusion only in front, we get a soft circular light and less intensive than when bare. With both the Fresnel and diffusion layers in front, we get a slightly squished circle pattern that is soft with a bright centre. The AD200 Pro with the standard head and protective glass left in place, but Fresnel removed, has somewhat of a cross shape. If we stick the Fresnel in front, we get a much more concentrated pattern. And here is an unmodified AD200 standard head for comparison, which you can see is similar but not as concentrated. The unmodified AD200 Pro bulb head with ADS2 reflector dish gives a nice round circular result. So what we can see from these tests is that removing the pieces from in front of the flash does have an effect on the light output. The light is spread much wider and so will be less intense than an unmodified flash used at the same distance and settings. We can put the original plastic back on the front of the flash, and this will actually result in more focused light than an unmodified flash would, due to the greater distance between the Fresnel and the flash tube. Any of the standard flash gun style Godox flashes seem to be fine for converting for UV photography. The larger, heavier and more expensive you go, the more UV light output you'll get. None of them give a large amount of UV output, but even the smaller ones should be okay if you can position it fairly close to your subject and use a higher ISO. Modifying the flash does affect the light output, but either you can just treat the flash like it permanently has a wide-angle diffuser attached, or if you're wanting to use the flash for visible light photography, you can find some way to reattach the original front glass in front of the flash to restore it to close to its original performance.